The record we never wanted to see.
And tomorrow, Lake Mead's water level is expected to sink to its lowest level since construction of the Hoover Dam.
Right now, beneath the still waters of Lake Mead, engineers have drilled a desperate tunnel through solid bedrock, racing against a deadline nobody can change. They spent over $800 million carving through ancient stone, building what they call a third straw, an emergency lifeline designed to keep water flowing when the unthinkable happens. That unthinkable has a name. Scientists call it the dead pool. When Lake Mead drops below 895 feet above sea level, gravity stops working. Water can no longer flow through Hoover Dam's intake towers. The turbines that generate electricity fall silent, and the water that sustains Las Vegas, Phoenix, Los Angeles, San Diego, and cities across 7 western states simply stops moving. The engineers who built that emergency tunnel knew this day was coming. What they didn't know was how fast it would arrive. Because the latest projections show Lake Mead isn't following the models. It's dropping faster than anyone predicted. And the question keeping water managers awake at night isn't whether the dead pool arrives, it's whether the systems they've built can outrun it. Picture yourself standing on the observation deck of Hoover Dam in 1935. The year construction finally ended. Behind you stretches an expanse of water so vast it looks like an inland sea. Lake Mead freshly filled, holding enough water to submerge entire states. The engineers who built this concrete giant believed they had solved the water problem for a century. They calculated every variable. They measured rainfall patterns. They studied snowmelt from the Rocky Mountains. They designed intake towers and spillways to handle whatever nature threw at them. And for decades, the system worked exactly as planned. Water flowed. Cities grew. Agriculture exploded across desert valleys that had been bone dry for millennia. That confidence is gone now. Today, the canyon walls around Lake Mead tell a different story. A stark white mineral band circles the reservoir like a bathtub ring, marking where the water used to be. That ring stretches over 150 feet high in places, a ghostly reminder of abundance that hasn't existed for more than 2 decades. Marinas that once floated luxury boats now sit stranded on cracked, sun-baked earth, hundreds of feet from the water's edge. Docks that welcomed fishermen hang suspended in empty air, their metal frames rusting above rocks that haven't been underwater in years. The numbers are worse than the images suggest. Lake Mead, at full capacity, holds water at 1,229 feet elevation. In the early 2000s, the reservoir was 95% full. Today, it hovers around 1,050 feet and continues dropping. Federal projections released in early 2026 show the reservoir could reach record lows by late 2027, potentially dipping below 1,033 feet, which would be the lowest level since the lake was first filled in the 1930s. This isn't a temporary drought. Scientists analyzing tree ring data have confirmed something alarming. The current dry spell represents the driest stretch in at least 1,200 years. That's not a typo. Researchers examined ancient trees across the Colorado River Basin, reading their growth rings like pages in a climate history book. Each ring records a year, wide rings indicating wet conditions, narrow rings revealing drought. What they found was stark. Nothing in more than a millennium matches what's happening right now. And the cause isn't just bad luck. Climate scientists estimate that human-caused warming has intensified this drought by more than 40%. Without rising temperatures, the current dry spell might have been unremarkable. Instead, hotter air evaporates more water from reservoirs. Warmer springs melt snowpack faster, sending precious runoff rushing toward the ocean before it can soak into aquifers. The Southwest isn't just experiencing drought, it's experiencing what some researchers now call aridification, a permanent shift toward drier conditions that may never fully reverse. For Las Vegas, this isn't an academic debate. It's an existential crisis unfolding in slow motion. Here's what most people don't understand about Hoover Dam. The water doesn't flow through the structure because pumps push it. Gravity does the work. 2 massive intake towers, one on the Arizona side and one on the Nevada side, sit at roughly 1,050 feet elevation. As long as Lake Mead's surface stays above those towers, water pressure naturally forces the flow downward through penstocks and turbines. But Lake Mead isn't staying above those towers anymore. The math is brutally simple. When the water surface drops below the intake elevation, the straws can no longer draw. The threshold engineers call the dead pool sites at 895 feet. The level where water falls below the lowest outlet structures, At that point, nothing flows through the dam by gravity. No water reaches the cities downstream. No electricity generates from the turbines. The system designed to serve 40 million people becomes a monument to miscalculation. And 895 feet isn't some distant theoretical marker. It's a hard physical limit, as immovable as the bedrock beneath the reservoir. Las Vegas saw this coming. In 2008, the Southern Nevada Water Authority made a decision that seemed almost paranoid at the time. They commissioned what would become one of the most challenging tunneling projects ever attempted in the United States. They called it Intake Number 3, though the media quickly dubbed it the third straw. The concept was straightforward. Drill a tunnel deep beneath Lake Mead to access water at elevations far below the existing intakes. Instead of relying on gravity flow through the dam's original infrastructure, create an independent pumping system that could pull water even as the lake shrank toward critical levels. Sounds logical, but the execution was anything but simple. Engineers faced a problem that bordered on impossible. They needed to bore a tunnel roughly 3 miles long through solid rock, all while operating beneath a body of water containing trillions of gallons. The construction couldn't drain the lake, couldn't shut down the water supply. It had to proceed while 40 million people continued using the system every single day. The team started from a location called Saddle Island on the Nevada side. They deployed a massive tunnel boring machine, a $25 million German-engineered monster, stretching the length of 2 football fields. The machine ground through layers of ancient rock, some dating back 1.7 billion years, while crews worked 600 feet below the lakebed in conditions that would make most construction workers reconsider their career choices. Then, disaster struck. In July 2010, the drilling machine hit an unexpected geological fault zone. Water and debris flooded the tunnel. Workers scrambled to evacuate. Engineers spent weeks trying to stabilize the breach, but the tunnel flooded again months later. The original pathway had to be abandoned entirely. Crews sealed it off and began drilling in a different direction, essentially starting over after years of work and hundreds of millions of dollars spent. The delays mounted. The cost climbed past $800 million, and in June 2012, tragedy arrived. A 44-year-old tunnel worker named Thomas Albert Turner died in a construction accident deep beneath the lake. He left behind a wife and 2 children. His brother also worked on the project. By December 2014, the tunnel boring machine finally broke through to the intake structure, hitting its target with precision, measured in inches after nearly 7 years of drilling. The 100-foot intake structure itself had been lowered to the lake bottom years earlier, cemented in place with concrete equivalent to 1,200 truckloads, then capped with a massive steel ball to hold back the water pressure. In September 2015, crews lifted that steel plug. Water flooded the tunnel, and the third straw became operational. The new intake draws water at 860 feet elevation. That's 190 feet below the original intakes and, crucially, 35 feet below the dead pool threshold. In theory, Las Vegas can now access water, even if Lake Mead drops to levels that would have made the entire system useless just a decade earlier. It's a triumph of engineering. It's also a monument to desperation, because $800 million and 7 years of dangerous work bought Las Vegas one thing: time, not water, not a solution, just more years before the inevitable arrives. Here's the uncomfortable truth that water managers understand, but rarely say publicly. The third straw doesn't create new water. It doesn't increase the supply. It simply allows access to what remains as the lake shrinks. If Lake Mead drops to 860 feet and Las Vegas is still pumping through the new intake, the water continues declining. Every gallon pulled through that emergency tunnel is a gallon that won't be there next month. The system consumes its own buffer. The margin for error shrinks towards zero. And the lake is dropping faster than the models predicted. In the 2 decades since 2000, Lake Mead has lost more than 150 feet of elevation. Tree ring reconstructions show the Colorado River delivered far more water during the early 20th century than its long-term average, meaning the entire legal framework dividing water among Western states was built on an illusion of abundance that never reflected reality. The Colorado River Compact of 1922, the foundational agreement allocating water among the 7 basin states, promised Nevada 300,000 acre-feet per year. But the river itself isn't delivering what the compact promised. Mandatory cuts have already reduced Nevada's allocation. Arizona and California face their own reductions, and the negotiations over what comes next have grown increasingly tense as states realize there simply isn't enough water to fulfill the legal obligations. Meanwhile, Las Vegas has done something remarkable. While most American cities ignored water conservation until crisis forced their hand, Las Vegas got ahead of the curve. Starting in 2003, the Southern Nevada Water Authority launched aggressive programs that have transformed how the region uses its most precious resource. The results defy the city's reputation. Between 2002 and 2025, Las Vegas reduced per capita water consumption by 58%. Not a typo. The city, famous for fountains, swimming pools, and desert extravagance, now uses less water per person than it did 2 decades ago, even as the population grew by nearly 900,000 residents during that same period. How? Start with grass. Nevada's desert receives about 4 inches of rain annually. Some American cities get that much in a single week. Yet for decades, Las Vegas homeowners maintained lawns that belonged in Ohio or Florida. A single square foot of grass in the Las Vegas Valley consumes 73 gallons of water each year. Multiply that by millions of square feet across residential neighborhoods, commercial properties, golf courses, and public spaces, and the waste becomes staggering. The Water Smart Landscapes program offered homeowners $3 for every square foot of grass they ripped out and replaced with desert-adapted landscaping. Since 1999, the program has removed more than 250 million square feet of turf, saving over 200 billion gallons of water. Beginning in 2027, decorative grass and medians, roundabouts, business entrances, and parking lots can no longer be irrigated with Colorado River water, period. Golf courses faced strict water budgets and surcharges if they exceeded their allocations. More than 30 courses have removed over 900 acres of grass. New golf courses are banned from using Colorado River water entirely. Indoor water gets recycled at rates that seem almost impossible. The Southern Nevada Water Authority recovers and returns nearly 99% of indoor water to Lake Mead through a sophisticated reclamation system. Showers, sinks, toilets, dishwashers, industrial processes, all of it gets captured, treated, and returned to the reservoir. As one water authority official put it, you could leave every faucet and shower running in every hotel room in Las Vegas, and it wouldn't consume any additional water because all that indoor use would get cycled back. The fountains at the Bellagio, those famous choreographed water displays that have become synonymous with Las Vegas excess, draw from a private well, not the Colorado River. The water that evaporates into the desert air gets replaced with recycled water from an underground pool holding over 1 million gallons. The city has become what experts call the most water-efficient major metro area in the United States, using less Colorado River water than it has in over 30 years, despite nearly doubling its population, but even that isn't enough. Conservation only buys time. It doesn't solve the fundamental imbalance. The Southwest still demands more water than the Colorado River can deliver. Climate change continues intensifying evaporation and reducing snowpack. And upstream, Lake Powell presents its own crisis that feeds directly into Lake Mead's decline. Lake Powell sits behind Glen Canyon Dam in northern Arizona, upstream from Hoover Dam. Think of the two reservoirs as linked stages in a single system. When Powell is full, it releases water that flows downstream into Mead. When Powell drops, so does the water reaching Mead. Lake Powell is currently around 24% capacity. The reservoir that once held enough water to supply the upper basin states for years now struggles to maintain minimum operating levels. Federal officials have considered the once unthinkable step of reducing releases from Powell to protect its own infrastructure, which would further starve Lake Mead. The cascade effect creates a mathematical trap. Not enough water in Powell means not enough water flowing into Mead. Not enough water in Mead means not enough water reaching the cities and farms that depend on the Colorado River. The entire system operates on a deficit that compounds year after year. Water managers are already planning for what happens when the third straw isn't enough. Desalination represents one possibility. California is studying facilities that could convert ocean water into fresh supplies and pipeline the result across the desert to Nevada. Modern desalination plants cost over $1 billion each and require enormous energy to separate salt from water at the molecular level. You'd need multiple facilities, hundreds of miles of pipeline, billions in infrastructure, and decades to build it all while the existing system continues declining. Agricultural water transfers offer another approach. The basic idea involves paying farmers not to grow crops, leaving their water allocations unused so the supply flows downstream to cities instead. This already happens in limited forms, with federal programs compensating producers who fallow fields during drought years. But it assumes farmers will always be willing sellers, that compensation remains economically viable, and that urban water users can absorb the escalating costs. There's also the conversation nobody wants to have. At some point, if the water doesn't return, the region simply cannot support its current population. Las Vegas cannot exist as a major city without water. Phoenix cannot continue growing. The agricultural industry in California's Central Valley cannot maintain production. Something has to give. The optimistic scenario involves nature cooperating. A series of wet years breaks the drought. Snowpack returns to historical averages. Lake Mead refills. The third straw becomes an unnecessary precaution, like a fire extinguisher you buy for peace of mind and never actually use. The pessimistic scenario involves climate scientists being correct. The southwestern United States has permanently transitioned to a drier regime. The Colorado River never returns to its historical flow. Lake Mead continues declining year after year until the dead pool isn't a one-time crisis, but a permanent condition the system enters and never leaves. In that scenario, the third straw doesn't delay the reckoning. It just marks the point where delay ran out. The dead pool isn't inevitable. California farmers have already proven that collective action works, voluntarily slashing Colorado River consumption to 1940s levels and saving over 1 million acre-feet in 2 years. Desalination technology keeps advancing. Agricultural innovation could save millions of additional acre-feet through drip irrigation and drought-resistant crops. And if every Southwest city matched Las Vegas's 58% reduction in water use, the math of the Colorado River changes entirely. The solutions exist. The question is whether 7 states can agree on who sacrifices what before nature decides for them. History offers a warning. The ancestral Puebloans abandoned the Four Corners during a megadrought 800 years ago. Their cliff dwellings still stand as monuments to what happens when adaptation comes too late. But history also offers hope. The third straw exists because Las Vegas refused to wait for crisis. The next decade will determine which version of history the Southwest writes. So here are the questions we must answer. If you lived in Las Vegas or Phoenix right now, what would you be willing to change? Would you tear out your lawn, pay higher water bills, support redirecting farm water to cities? Feel free to drop your answer in the comments because this debate isn't hypothetical anymore. If you're new here, please consider to hit subscribe. We cover the forces reshaping our world that don't make the evening news but probably should. The dead pool is still years away, but the decisions that determine whether it arrives, these are quietly being made right now.